and welcome to Craft with Sarah. In this video I'm going to show you how to make this gorgeous sunflower frame with your Cricut machine. So all of the sunflowers are cut out with the Cricut and then layered together with foam pads to create this 3D effect. Now of course your frame would probably have glass in the front, but I have just taken mine out for the video because it was reflecting my camera and looking a little bit weird. So this is a free download from my website. You can get it from craftwithsarah.com, or I'll drop a link in the description of this video. So let's find out how to make this beautiful sunflower frame. Once you've downloaded the file from my website, it will come as a zip folder. You need to unzip the folder first before you can upload the SVG file into Cricut Design Space. To do this on a Windows computer, right-click on the zip folder and then press Extract All. Choose where you want to save the files to and then press Extract. You've now got another copy of the folder, but this time the little icon doesn't have that zip on it. If you're using a Mac or a mobile device, check the description of this video as I'll link to a post where you can find out information on how to unzip folders on your particular machine or device. I'm just going to double click into the unzipped folder to show you what's in here. There's a folder called SVG file, and that's the one that contains the SVG that you'll upload into Design Space. There's another folder called Other File Formats, and you only need to use that if you're using a different type of cutting machine, such as a Silhouette. So in there's a DXF and a PNG version of the file. But if you're using a Cricut, all you need is the one in SVG file. To upload the SVG into Design Space, start a new project and then click on Upload. Next, press Upload Image and then drag and drop or browse to find that SVG file. So I've got mine here, and remember it's the one in the folder called SVG file, and then I'm going to drag the SVG in. This will load up on the screen so you can see it here with all the different colours, and then I'm going to press Upload. It's now in my recent uploads, so I can click on it and then press Insert Images, and it's going to put it onto my page for me. Now there is a little weird quirk or bug in Design Space 6.4, which is the one I'm using at the moment, where when you upload an SVG file, it's coming in at 12 inches tall, so it's really big. So you want to make sure that you resize it to fit your frame before you cut it out, otherwise you might end up with something that's way too big. In order to know what size to make the sunflower design to cut it out, you'll need to measure your frame. I've got a square box frame here and I've taken off the back, and then I'm just going to take out the spacer that's inside. So my spacer, you want to measure it from one edge to the other edge. So mine is 8.5 inches wide. So that will be the size of the main kind of frame that I have underneath. So I've actually already cut a piece to size of card, just white card. You can see that'll be exactly the same size. But to get the sunflower design, you wouldn't want to make it all the way to the edge on here, because when you turn your frame over, you'll notice that some of the parts of the front cover up some of the edges. So we need to make sure that our design will still be visible. The easiest way to do this, I think, is to take the front of the frame so it's facing you, and then position your ruler so that it lines up with the inside of the frame, and see how much space you've got there. So mine is just about 8 inches, but I don't want to make it too close to the edge because I want to make a border to go around there so that the frame has a nice edging to it. So I'm thinking for mine, I'd probably want my design to be about 6.5 inches in width. That's going to give me a nice gap around the edge, and it will fit beautifully into the middle. When I make the mat to go around the edge, that's going to need to be 8.5 inches wide, the same as my main white piece. And then having a little think, if there's 8 inches there, I'll probably make the middle square 7.5. I want my design to be 6.5 inches wide, so I'm just going to change that box to 6.5 at the top, and then that's resized for me. To make the frame for my design to go into the shadow box, I'm going to go into Shapes and choose a square. I'll just drag this over to the side a bit so it's easier to see. And then I want to size this so that it's the size of the outside of the spacer that I measured a minute ago. So mine was 8.5 inches and it's a square. To make the smaller square in the middle to cut out to make that frame, I'm going to right click on the square and press duplicate. I'm going to make this one white just so it's easier to see, and then resize this to the size that I decided the inside of that frame should be. I need to position this white square directly in the middle of the grey one, so I'm going to click and draw a box around both of them and then go into Align at the top and press Center. And that's put that white square directly in the middle. So now with those two squares still selected, I can go down to the bottom of the Layers panel and press Slice. What that's done is it's cut the white square out of the grey one, so now I have 3 separate layers. I don't need the first 2, so I'm going to delete those, and then I'm just left with this one, and this is going to be the mat for my vase. What I can do before I cut this out is just drag the vase in to make sure that it's going to fit, which it is perfectly. So this is now ready for me to go ahead and click Make It and follow the steps to cut it out on my Cricut machine. One thing I like to do when I'm cutting out things for shadow boxes is to first cut out the frame so that I know it's going to fit in my box, so I'll actually try putting it into the physical shadow box. And then the next layer I cut out is the base layer of the layer design, so the bottom one. And again, that's just so that I can place it in my frame before I cut everything else out, just to double check I'm happy with the size, because you don't want to cut out everything and then find out it's too big or too small. So by just doing that bottom layer first, which is the biggest layer, you'll know if you've done it to the right size. So go ahead, cut everything out, and then I'll show you how to stick it all together. So here's my bottom layer of the design. So I'm just going to place the top of the frame over to get a little idea of what that'll look like. I think there's a lot of light shining on this, so I'm not sure if you can see it very well. But it is fitting nicely into the white of the middle. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out all of the other layers. Here are all of my layers put out, and when I cut out layered designs, I like to just roughly place everything on top of itself before I stick it together, just to make sure I haven't forgotten any layers. And also this is a really good way to check that you're happy with the colours, and if you're not at this point, then you can go ahead and recut any layers that you want to change the colour of. But I'm happy with how this one's looking, so I'm just going to split it out into the different sections ready to be stuck together. So the first layers to stick on are the 2 layers of the vase, but before I put them on my design, I'm going to glue this top layer onto the bottom layer. And the reason I'm using glue is that this is really thin and narrow, and I wouldn't be able to cut my foam pad small enough. And also when you layer up the sunflowers on top, it would look better if this is glued rather than done with foam. I'm using tacky glue from Tonic Studios, which I like because it dries really quick, it's strong, it dries see-through, and it's got a nice narrow top, so it's going to be nice and easy to put the glue in these small spaces. This is only a small bit of card, so you don't need to go crazy and add tons of glue, because not only might that risk it smushing out of the sides when you stick it to the other layer, but it might seep through to the other side of the card, which we don't want. And then let's just turn it over and stick it to the other layer. Okay, so now I can attach this to my base layer, and I'm going to use some 3D foam pads. My foam is quite big, and so I'm just going to cut it smaller with a pair of scissors. It doesn't need to be too big, and I don't want to waste my supplies. So turn the vase upside down. And I'm just going to put a couple of pieces of foam on the back, and then line it up against the bottom of your base layer. I've got lots of dust everywhere today. I think I need to have a bit of a cleaning session in my craft room. I'll just line that up and push it down. The next layer to stick on is the green, which is going to go over the top. Now when you're adding your foam pads, make sure you don't put any on this bottom section, because that's going to overlap the vase, so you want to make sure there's no foam there, otherwise you won't be able to slide it over the top. So let's turn this upside down, and once again I'm just going to add some foam to the back. You want to make sure you put a few pieces in the middle so that it doesn't sag under the weight of the sunflowers once they go on the top. I'm going to stick this. You know what? I just did exactly what I said not to do. Did you notice? I put a piece on the bottom. Let's just take that off. Okay, so now I don't have a bit on the bottom. Oh dear. I can just line this up. So that bottom bit just slides nicely over the top of the vase to hide it with the leaf pattern. The next thing we're going to add is the bottom layer of the sunflowers. So I'm just going to move all these layers apart. And this one will line up along there. So again, this will be a foam pad layer. Peel off the tops to reveal that stickiness underneath. And then line it up with where the petals are on that green layer. Alright, so the next layer is the top of the sunflower, and it's up to you on this one if you want to use glue or foam. I think I'm going to use foam. So now I'm going to line this up, and for this one it's easiest to do it based on this bottom sunflower, and then all the other petals should just line up once you've got that one done. Alright, next I've got the middle of the sunflowers, and again just a little bit of foam on the back, and then stick each circle into the middle of the sunflower. So now we've just got the biggest sunflower to add on, and this is really quite tricky to line up the petals, so it's not symmetrical, they're all different, so it might take you quite a bit of trial and error to get them all lined up, but the layers do line up, so if you're having trouble with it, just keep with it, keep trying to line it up, and eventually you'll get there. So I'm gonna put that like that, and then try and get that lined up. So I've got some foam pads on the back of the darker piece. Hopefully I've not moved this about too much so it'll still line up. Oh no. No, I've managed to move it. Oh dear. So you see what I mean about it being a bit tricky, but it will eventually line up so that all the petals exactly match the one underneath. So that would be there. There we go. And I'm going to do this one. I think I'm just going to add one little bit of foam in the middle, and that's all I'll need. That one I've already got nice and lined up, so that was easy. And then finally just the circle. I'm going to cheat and put the foam on there. And then, there we go, that is our layered sunflower complete. So you can see all the layers. That's looking really pretty, and it's now ready to go in the shadow box. So here is my base and my frame that I cut earlier. So I need to stick these together, and for this I'm going to use a bit of double-sided tape. So let's turn this upside down, and then I've got a tape runner here which puts out double-sided tape. I love this, it's so easy to use, and it's a lot easier than having to cut the tape manually and peel the backs off. It does it all for you. I'll put a link to where you can find it in the description of this video in case you want to check it out. But now I can line this up against my bottom piece. Okay, so now I've got my mat on my frame. I can add the sunflowers onto it, and I'm just going to, I think, glue this on. I could use the foam tape, but I think the glue will be a little bit stronger. I don't want it falling off the backing because it is quite heavy with all of those layers on. I'm trying to avoid the little leaves that only have this base layer on, because I don't want the glue showing through on the other side. Sometimes it can, if you're adding quite a lot like I am here. So I don't want it to show through. So I'm only adding the glue where I know there's other layers of card. And then bring this in, put it where I want it to go. I'm just going to lightly drop it to start with so that I can move it about a bit if I'm not happy. And then push it down gently to get that glue to stick. You don't want to push it too hard because you don't want the glue to smush out the sides. So just gentle pushes. And then I'm going to leave that to dry fully before I try and put it in my frame. I've got some Nuvo glitter drops here. And I think I'm going to add a little bit of sparkle to these little circle bits on the leaves. So this is just, it's kind of like a thick glitter glue, but it dries 3D. You could also use some little gemstones or sequins, or just leave it as it is. You don't have to add anything to it. I'm going to test it out on a bit of scrap first. So it's just going to make a little raised oval of glitter on those circles, which I think will look really pretty. It should catch the light nicely when the frame is displayed. It's a little bit tricky because I didn't actually put any glue on the bottom of these pieces. So you can see it's lifting up. But if you get the little tails of the Nuvo drop as it comes out, then you don't need to worry because it does seem to settle into the drop and create a nice dome effect as it dries. Alright, so that's all of those little drops. I'm going to leave that to dry until tomorrow and then see how it looks in the shadow box. Alright, so it's the next day and my Nuvo drops are now all perfectly dry, so it's time to put this in the frame. I'm going to put the glass in first, and I'd recommend cleaning it with a microfiber cloth or some alcohol wipes to get all the dust and things off. And then next I'm going to add the spacer. There we are, and then the design will just slot into the back and sit on top of that spacer. So finally we can put the back of the frame in, close all the little pieces up, and here we have it. I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial on how to make and assemble your sunflower frame. If you have, please give this video a thumbs up, leave me a comment below and subscribe to my channel for loads more Cricut Craft tutorials. And as ever, if you want the free design for this one, check out the description of the video because I link to it in there. Thank you for watching. Bye.